4 rounds of Modern, in fact. We've already gotten underway here, so we'll get over there nice and quick. Today we are starting for you with Dan facing off against Jesse. Dan is on Grixis Death Shadow, and Jesse is on Counter's Company. So we're already underway. Jesse here has a Forest and a Birds of Paradise turn 1, so the start he's looking for. Dan, on the other hand, has just a Bloodstained Mire to begin. Jesse's turn 2 is a Devoted Druid, and Dan has a end of turn Thought Scour. So Dan's down to 17 here. Jesse still at 20, hasn't used that fetch land just yet, hasn't needed to. Dan has drawn his, again, one of copy of Temur Battle Rage. Dan is really good at drawing that one of, so... Dan here debating what he wants to do. He's got a pair of Terminates in hand, quite a few lands actually. So Dan now down to 16. I just realized I have to update. This is not this. FNM Modern. There we go. Update that. It's no longer a cube draft. All right, there we go. We're back. So yeah, so Dan here deciding to go with fetch out a Blood Crypt and then play a Tasigur. So yeah, it's a pretty good turn 2. Death Shadow, very, very good at getting a bunch of cards into its graveyard. So Jesse at end of turn does go ahead and fetch out a Temple Garden into play tap. So down to 19 he goes. Has a couple, I think he has a couple Court of Callings in hand. Doesn't have the Vizier yet. However, he is able to go find the Vizier. Yeah, he could have gone and found it, but decides to go ahead and play a copy of Kitchen Finks. And then he will make a little extra mana and play another Kitchen Finks. So I must have been mistaken. It must not have been a Court of Calling he had in his hand. No, his hand right now is Stomping Ground Eternal Witness. That explains why. All right. Passes back to Dan. Dan's draw is a pretty good one. It's Kolaghan's Command that can deal with either part of the combo when Jesse goes to assemble it. Or it can just force him to discard right now. Wouldn't be the biggest deal. Jesse would just discard a land, but Dan with a third land has a Polluted Delta. Going to go ahead and sacrifice that down to 13. So we almost can play a Death Shadow. There's a pretty good chance Dan probably is going to shock himself here. I wouldn't be too surprised. That way he is then able to begin playing Death Shadows if he has them. Actually, I'm wrong. He's going to go ahead and grab an island. So no Death Shadows being played this turn unless he has another way to deal himself some damage. Lest he wants them just to go to the graveyard, of course. His hand right now is a pair of Terminates, a Kolaghan's Command, a land, and he had the Serum Visions here. I thought he had one more. I could have been wrong, but... So Dan scries both to the bottom. Yeah, sorry, he also had the Temur Battle. That's what I forgot about. So 6 cards, 2 Terminates, a Kolaghan's Command, Temur Battle Rage, a land, and he also added to it now a Serum Visions. So his hand's not bad. He's taken himself off playing Kolaghan's Command, but he does, of course, have Terminate available still, so no problems there. Jesse's draw for the turn is going to be a Vizier of Remedies. So he has infinite mana, but nothing to do with it currently. His hand at that point is... Eternal Witness and a Stomping Ground. So the infinite mana doesn't matter. All right, so Jesse's going to go ahead and Ghost Quarter Dan's red source. Dan's going to float a mana in response. He goes for the red source because he knows that Dan doesn't play any basic mountains. And it could potentially take him off the ability to play any red spells he has. It was also the only one that was a unique color to him. Yeah. I mean, I guess technically he leaves black now as unique, but... before we change the phase, we're going to go ahead and terminate the Devoted Druid, it looks like. Yep, so Devoted Druid down. Just debating where to go next. Now he can witness back the Devoted Druid if he'd like, so it's not gone. For good at least. 3 mana, he will go ahead and play the Eternal Witness, and he will in fact get back the Devoted Druid. Dan will then go ahead and play a land. And say go. So at the moment, not Dan, sorry, Jesse. At the moment, Jesse has available in his hand the combo. He just needs to be able to play it. Again, he does still need the actual outlet for infinite mana at this point. He's missing something to do with it. But he does have infinite mana available. Which, as great as you may think that is, doesn't always do anything. So Dan here, another Serum Visions, looking at Snapcaster Mage and a land. His draw was a Thoughtseize. So Dan is able to Thoughtseize here. He knows that he can get Devoted Druid if nothing else. He will see that Jesse has the entire combo available to him, so... Okay, looks like he went 1 top, 1 bottom, I believe, which would make sense. You don't want the land, but you do want the Snapcaster Mage more than likely. And sure enough, he will go ahead and fire off this Thoughtseize. We're going to look at Devoted Druid, Vizier Remedies. So Dan is going to pick 1 half of this combo. He'll get rid of the Devoted Druid half. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, either way. So still has an answer. He actually has another Serum Vision still. So Serum Visions, which he'll play. He draws Snapcaster Mage. He looks at land, and I believe that was a Death Shadow. I didn't get a great look at it, but it was a black spell for sure. He is at 8 now as well, so Death Shadows are definitely playable. The draw was a Chord of Calling, so that's a really good draw, and it was a really good play or a good choice that Dan did in fact Thoughtseize there, because had he not, he would have died this turn. So Jesse instead now is just left with playing the Vizier Remedies out and saying go. I feel like I probably, I guess with Chord of Calling in hand, no. I guess if he doesn't draw Chord of Calling there, I wonder if Jesse attacks with the Finks and the Eternal Witness, because you can just get in a guaranteed 5 points of damage. There's no Death Shadow in play just yet, so you don't have to be afraid of Dan, all of a sudden swinging back for an absurd amount of damage. Right now, the most he's swinging back for is 4. And he will go ahead and attack for 4, which I assume Jesse's fine with taking here. Jesse looks to be debating double blocking with his Sphinx here. It looks like he has finalized that, so Dan will now have to decide what he wants to do. He can try to Kolaghan's Command, kill one of the Finks, and then make Jesse discard a card. That runs the risk of him dying the following turn, though, because I imagine that Jesse just goes ahead and chords. He's going to chord in response, obviously. I imagine he goes and grabs the Devoted Druid to complete his combo. He just, again, needs something to do with it. So Dan accidentally, with his flicking, reveals a Death Shadow in his hand. He can also, if he wants, which I think he might be looking at doing instead, is set up Terminate as opposed to Kolaghan's Command. I don't really see what the difference is there. I think I would rather Kolaghan's Command because it's less mana efficient. Like later on. Okay, he's actually going to terminate the Vizier Remedies. Sure. Jesse will respond with this Court of Calling. Yep, he's in a court for 2. He may just go find another Vizier, potentially. He needs both halves again. Yeah, he'll grab another Vizier. So down goes the first one. Kitchen Finks will trade off with Tasigur. Jesse will gain another 4 life as well. Unless Dan wants to... No, he can't now. I was going to say, unless he wants to Temur Battle Rage, but he can't do that anymore, so... So, again, Jesse is now... I guess you could say 2 parts of the combo away from going off because he's missing the Devoted Druid half and he's also missing... 27? And he's missing the outlet for the infinite mana, so... So sure enough, Tasigur does go down, and here is a Death Shadow to follow it, to replace it. So we have currently a 5/5 Death Shadow. Again, there's the Battle Rage in Dan's hand. He also has a Kolaghan's Command and a Snapcaster Mage. Jesse is not currently dead, even if... Oh, okay. Oh. So one of the Finks should have a counter on it, no? Oh, no, Vizier blocked it. That's right, never mind. Yeah. So Dan decided to deal all the damage to one of the Finks. That way it avoids Jesse gaining 4 life. He only gains 2. But again, because of Vizier... the Kitchen Finks don't get the counter on them. Wait, doesn't Jesse just win if he attacks with Vizier and Witness there? No, he doesn't win. He puts down to 1. Yeah, he puts down to 1. He's missing a point there. That's unfortunate. So Dan is at 2, so he has an 11/11, which means that the Battle Rage makes it 22 damage. But even that's not enough right now. Jesse could honestly just say, yeah, I'll take 22 damage and, untap, take his turn and win. I don't think Dan can attack. I think he has to hold up Snapcaster Terminate here, probably. And also have 2 blockers. Is that even enough, though? No, Snap Terminate's not even enough because... Jesse just has 4 attackers that are lethal, and Dan would only have answers for 3 of them, including his blocking creatures. So I think Jesse's going to win this. Yeah, Dan will have to Thought Scour to try and find something. I just don't know what he could find here. Okay, I was going to say a cheap creature is probably the answer, but actually it's not still. Because the problem is now that he's used a mana, he doesn't have the ability to Snapcaster removal spell. So basically, this cheap creature replaces the Terminate. It's a second blocker, and Snapcaster can be a third. So Jesse, all he has to do here is swing with everything, and he should win. I'm just curious if he sees that. The way it's set up now, even with just the two blockers, Jesse can put together that at best, if Dan has only one answer, he's still ahead. He still wins here. So Dan would need two answers with 2 mana available. The only way that would work is like double Fatal Push, but only one of Jesse's creatures is vulnerable to Fatal Push. That's attacking at least, without Revolt. That's the Vizier of Remedies. So yeah, Jesse sees it here and just turns them all sideways except for the bird, and this should be lethal. Dan gonna have a look here to see if he can do anything, but again, his only options here would be like his only option is Snapcaster. The only other potential option he could have would be like a removal spell, but even then he's still short an answer to the actual lethal creature. So does Dan even play Bolt though? I thought Death Shadow cut bolts. Like, that would be the answer, Lightning Bolt push, but I don't... Does he even play bolts? I think Death Shadow has moved away from playing Lightning Bolts. Actually, let me see. I think I have his list here from the last event, and I can't imagine he's changed it much since then. Let me see. Jesse, Mark, Alex, Rick... Yeah, let's see here. So... Oh, that's the wrong one. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, no, Death Shadow doesn't play Lightning Bolts. The only... So the main deck kill spells he has 4 Fatal Push, 2 Kolaghan's Command, 2 Terminate. That's it for removal spells. So yeah, I mean, Lightning Bolt would have been the answer, but he would have had to have been playing Lightning Bolt in that case, which he is not currently playing. Unless he's changed his list since Sunday, which is entirely possible, of course. But Dan usually sticks with main decks. He kind of tweaks the sideboard here and there, but yeah, no bolts on the board either. So the best he could have had would have been like double Fatal Push. And again, that's not even an answer because he doesn't have Revolt to actually turn on the second push to be able to kill a 3-drop. All right, so we're going to head to game 2 here shortly. Jesse's just finishing up his sideboard choices. Dan will have the play. I imagine he'll be looking to do 1 of 2 things. Either a bunch of damage to himself on turn 1, usually culminating in a Thoughtseize, or set up well, that's what he wants to do. I don't know what else I was thinking, to be honest. All right, so Dan looking here at his opening 7. Brought in Surgical, which is fine here. If Dan tries to go for Infinite Life, if Jesse even tries to go for Infinite Life, or even if Dan just gets to take a key card from his deck with a Thoughtseize, then it's justified. Dan does like his surgical effects, but yeah. Dan is debating here. I think he has 2 lands. All right, he's gonna mulligan. His hand didn't look that bad to me. I don't know. It's strange. Jesse's taking a look at his opening hand. There's a Vizier and a Druid there. A Coco. All right. So I think Jesse is, again, looking for just the payoff spell. He looks to have the entirety of the combo in his hand. But yeah, a Coco can get him there if he finds like a Ronus or yeah, that's it because he's not playing Dustwatch anymore, so it would have to be Ronus. Dan will decide to keep his 6. He has his Surgical in his opening hand again. He also has a Street Wraith in the front there, a Terminate behind it, I believe a Death Shadow behind that. Bloodstained Mire. It's still one lander here, so one lander with a card draw with this Street Wraith. So, and that's where Dan's actually going to start. He's going to start with that Street Wraith being cycled. He'll find a Temur Battle Rage. Again, that's a 1-of for him. So, Burton Forge Tender. That's respecting that Death Shadow decks, Grixis especially, are playing Anger of the Gods in the sideboard. I don't know if Dan is. I assume he is. Yeah, he is. So, good way to deal with those. Jesse also starting off on a Brushland there, so he does play 4 copies of Eldrazi Displacer, 3 or 4, I think. So, needs some way to use their ability. And those are what he's using. Dan here on the end step is going to fetch. I don't believe he had... I know he doesn't have a second land. And I also don't believe he has a Thought Scour here. He's got Snapcaster Mage, Snapcaster Surgical, Temur Battle Rage, Terminate, and it's either a Grimag Angler or a Death Shadow. It's one of the two. He's going to go ahead and put into play a Watery Grave untapped just to deal damage himself. So that tells me it's probably a Death Shadow. Yeah, it's Death Shadow. So he wants to get that Shadow in play as fast as he can. He doesn't find a second land, but he finds a Serum Vision, so he's going to dig for a second land here, hopefully finding one on the draw. He does. He finds Scalding Tarn, so that's a good one. He looks at a pair of Fatal Pushes on top of the deck. He will put one on top, one on bottom. Play Scalding Tarn and say go. So Burton Forge Tender holding down the fort right now. The draw is a second Brushland. Jesse can go ahead now and put out one half of his combo. There is an answer in Dan's hand. That's Terminate, obviously. Now Burton Forge Tender stops all damage. I don't know why he didn't get attacked for 1 there, but Forge Tender does stop all damage. I guess he doesn't want to help Dan a bit. I guess that makes sense. Can't stop Terminate though. It doesn't say like counter a red spell. It just says prevent all damage it would deal. So Terminate will still be a solid answer to the Voodoo Druid. And Dan has the option here. He could Surgical, or he could Terminate and then Surgical away the Devoted Druid. He decides not to do that. I think he wants to wait until he has to, is my guess. It's going to be interesting here because Jesse has Path to Exile, so, and he also has the Vizier, of course. So I have to imagine he's got it on his mind that he wants to go for the infinite combo. He decides not to because he has Coco in hand instead. So I like Jesse's restraint here. In not just going for the Vizier to make infinite mana then play Coco. He's going to play it safe and just go for a Coco on Dan's end step instead. Which is, again, I imagine if Jesse goes for Vizier there, Dan terminates in response, which just makes sense. And then can go ahead and extract them. And I don't think Jesse has... Not necessarily the foresight, but I don't think he has the thought in his head that Dan has Surgical in his hand ready to go for that Druid. So I don't think he would have the... I don't think anyone really would just think to themselves, yeah, I better do this now. So Dan at 12 will go ahead. He's thinking about it. Is he putting himself... Yeah, he is. Interesting. He has Stubborn Denial, but Jesse can pay for it because that Stubborn Denial is still just a force spike. Here's Coco. And he'll put the counter on it here. So, yeah, and Dan can go ahead and try to fire off the Stubborn Denial, but it's not going to work. Dan realized that. He does have Fatal Push, so he can, if he wants, Fatal Push away the Druid so he doesn't die. But this runs the risk now of, I mean, I guess it was always there, but he's going to let it resolve. So Jesse will get to take a look here. He found, just Devoted Druid. I was going to say, I think he only found Devoted Druid, but there it is. So now Dan's not even safe with a Fatal Push. Jesse doesn't have, again, he's missing the payoff spell here for the infinite mana. He doesn't have the Ronus in his hand. He doesn't have a cord to go find it. His draw was a second Vizier of Remedies. So Dan is going to, on the draw step, extract Jesse's Collected Companies, which is a good, I mean, it's definitely a good target. So we're going to look at a pair of Viziers, a pair of Kitchen Finks, and a Path to Exile. So Jesse can go ahead this turn and play out both his Kitchen Finks with the Vizier, and then still have up Path mana for the Death Shadow. So way to go, Collected Companies there. And I imagine Jesse will go ahead and make the play that I had mentioned. Yeah. There's Vizier. Dan can still respond with Fatal Push, so killing one of these, but it doesn't matter. The real issue here as well is that you can't break this combo up. Once it starts, he can, like, Dan's gonna push away, I imagine, the one that has no counters on it, because I think he's pushing in response to the Vizier here. But once the combo starts, you can't stop it because you can just choose to untap it again and again and again and again. So even if Dan tries to respond to the Devoted Druid untap ability, Jesse can just do it again to get around that, and then eventually push will resolve, and that's fine. So yeah, Dan's going to go ahead and push away the Druid that has no counter on it. This is fine, I'm sure. I think Jesse just made some mana before it went away. Still goes infinite. Yeah, it's the cost of it is to put a counter on it. It just doesn't. You just don't do it. I think Dan thought if it already had a counter on it, it couldn't be used anymore. That's not the case. It just, the Vizier says if you would place a counter on it, place one less, and Devoted Druid says place it -1/-1 counter on it and tap it. So you just get rid of that entire -1/-1 part. Jesse does go ahead, play out both pairs of both copies of Kitchen Finks, gains him some life, back up to 21 now, and he's in an okay spot here. Dan's at 10, and again he has the Teamer Battle Rage. So right now, Death Shadow is just a 3/3. Gurmag and Denial get milled over. Nihil Spellbomb is the draw. Dan, I think he really wants to find a third land here. He just hasn't found one yet. So here is going to be a Spellbomb. Okay. And pass the turn back. So Jesse will untap and draw, looking for a Ronus or a Court of Calling. Yeah, or even a red source, just to win the game with Kessig Wolf Run. But it looks like he found Path to exile number 2. So he has Path, and the Zero Remedies. So he will Path the Death Shadow out of the way, falling to 20, and then he will put in an attack for 3, 6, 8, 9, putting Dan to 1. Dan doesn't have a choice to take that. He's not playing Slaughter Pact or anything like that, so he's down to 1. I don't know what he could draw. Burton Forge Tender, even if Dan had some way to get a second red without taking pain, would take away the possibility of Anger of the Gods, which would be a good choice here. Nihil Spellbind is definitely not the answer. Snapcaster Mage is not enough. Yeah, this is going to be the game. So Jesse will take down Death Shadow in 2.